The golden rays of morning filtered through the tall windows of the grand estate, spilling across the polished marble floors. Elena moved quietly, carrying a tray of breakfast dishes toward the kitchen. She had worked in this house for almost 3 years, and still every morning felt like a test of endurance. Richard, her employer, was kind enough. He rarely spoke down to her and often offered a polite nod in greeting. But his fiancée, Vanessa, was another matter entirely. Vanessa had a sharp tongue, the kind that could slice through dignity and leave Elena feeling like she was nothing more than the dirt she scrubbed from the mansion's tiles. Elena. Vanessa's voice cracked across the hall like a whip. Elena stiffened, balancing the tray carefully before setting it down. She turned, bowing her head slightly. Vanessa swept into the room, her silk robe trailing behind her like a queen's train. Her flawless makeup was already in place, even though it was barely 8 in the morning. "Yes, ma'am," Elena asked softly. Vanessa's eyes narrowed as they traveled down Elena's faded uniform. "The flowers in the dining hall are wrong. I specifically asked for white lilies, not those dreadful carnations. Do you expect me to entertain my bridal brunch with such vulgar arrangements?" Elena's cheeks burned, though she kept her gaze lowered. "I'll replace them immediately, ma'am." "You should have done it right the first time," Vanessa snapped, before turning on her heel and gliding away. Elena let out a shaky breath once she was gone. This was nothing new. Every day Vanessa found something to criticize: her cleaning, her appearance, even the way she breathed too loudly in the hallways. Elena endured it in silence, because she had no choice. The paycheck she received here was the only thing keeping her mother's medicine stocked. And so, she bent and bent, praying she wouldn't break. In the afternoons, Elena often overheard snippets of conversations Vanessa had with her friends, bragging about her wedding and about Richard's wealth. "He's so gullible," Vanessa once laughed, sipping champagne while Elena polished the silver. "Men like him believe whatever sweet story you tell. Honestly, if I wanted to, I could run off tomorrow with twice the jewelry I've already got." Her friends giggled, clinking glasses. Elena's stomach had twisted that day, but she said nothing. It wasn't her place, she reminded herself. Who was she to meddle in the affairs of the wealthy? She was just the housekeeper, invisible unless someone wanted to mock her. But there were other things she couldn't ignore. She had seen Vanessa slip out late at night when Richard was away on business, her perfume heavy, her lipstick smudged when she returned. Elena once glimpsed her stepping out of a black car, leaning too closely toward a man who wasn't Richard. The way they touched each other left no doubt about what kind of secret they shared. Those images haunted Elena. Richard was a good man, at least, as far as she could tell. He greeted staff with kindness, remembered birthdays, and once even sent Elena home early when she looked pale from exhaustion. He didn't deserve betrayal, yet he seemed utterly blind to it. As the wedding day drew closer, the house buzzed with frantic preparation. Florists, decorators, caterers, all of them moved in and out of the mansion like bees in a hive. Vanessa reveled in the chaos, demanding perfection in every detail. Elena worked twice as hard, her hands raw from scrubbing, her back aching from carrying boxes, yet her heart grew heavier with each passing day. She wanted to scream, to shake Richard and tell him the truth, but fear held her back. If Vanessa found out Elena had spoken, she would destroy her. One word, and Elena could lose her job, her income, and her mother's health along with it. One night, after Vanessa retired to her suite, Elena stood in the empty ballroom where the reception would take place. The chandeliers sparkled above her, their light reflecting on the glossy floor. She pressed a hand against her chest, whispering to herself. "What should I do?" Her voice cracked in the silence. She thought of her mother lying weak in bed, of Richard smiling with love he didn't know was misplaced, and of Vanessa's cruel laughter echoing in her ears. Her conscience gnawed at her. Remaining silent was safer, but it was also a lie. And every time she looked at Richard, she wondered how long she could bear the weight of knowing what she knew. Something inside her told her that soon, silence would no longer be an option. The wedding loomed like a storm on the horizon, and Elena sensed the thunder was about to break. The church bells tolled in the distance, their sound floating across the crisp morning air. Inside the grand cathedral, sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting the marble aisles in hues of crimson, blue, and gold. The pews were already filled with finely dressed guests, their whispers buzzing like a restless swarm of bees. All eyes darted toward the flower-adorned altar, where the union of Richard and Vanessa was about to be celebrated in splendor. Elena stood near the side, her uniform blending into the shadows as she assisted with small tasks, carrying bouquets, straightening ribbons, and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. To the guests, she was invisible, just another servant in the background. But her heart thundered in her chest as she watched Vanessa glide down the aisle for a rehearsal earlier that morning, her white gown trailing behind her like clouds stitched with pearls. To the world, Vanessa looked like a vision of perfection, a bride fit for a millionaire. But Alina's eyes could not forget the late-night trysts, the whispered phone calls, and the disdain Vanessa wore whenever she thought no one important was looking. Now, as the ceremony began, Richard stood tall at the altar, his face glowing with pride and happiness. His tuxedo fit him impeccably, and the love in his eyes seemed unshakable. Alina's throat tightened. She wanted to feel happy for him, but each moment the ceremony progressed felt like watching a man step willingly into a trap. The organ began to play, the heavy notes filling the cathedral as Vanessa appeared at the doors. Gasps of admiration rippled through the guests. She looked radiant, her veil shimmering in the light, her diamonds glittering like stars. But Elena caught the quick flicker of Vanessa's eyes to the crowd, landing on a sharply dressed man seated in the fourth row. He gave a nearly imperceptible nod. It was enough. Elena's stomach dropped. That was the man she had seen Vanessa with before. What was he doing here? Vanessa walked gracefully down the aisle, her expression soft and demure for Richard's sake. Richard's face lit up, and Elena wanted to scream, "Don't you see? Don't you see what she's doing?" Her hands trembled as she clutched the bouquet she was carrying for decoration, nearly crushing the petals. The priest welcomed everyone, his voice echoing through the vaulted ceilings. Guests leaned in, enraptured by the solemn beauty of the occasion. Elena could barely breathe, each word felt like a nail sealing Richard's fate. The vows began. Richard spoke with sincerity, his voice steady, his eyes locked on Vanessa as he promised to cherish and protect her for the rest of his life. Elena's vision blurred with tears. He meant every word. When it was Vanessa's turn, she repeated the vows with perfect poise, her voice sweet, but Elena heard the hollowness beneath it. She had seen the way. Vanessa spoke to people when she thought she was above them, sharp, cruel, unfeeling. Now, in front of everyone, she played the role of the devoted bride flawlessly. The priest's voice deepened as he reached the moment that hung over Elena like a blade. "If anyone here knows of any reason why this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The words reverberated in her ears. Elena's heart pounded so loudly she thought the guests around her must hear it. Her palms were slick with sweat, and her knees nearly gave out. She looked at Richard, so blissfully unaware, his smile tender, his entire future stretched before him like a golden road. Then her gaze shifted to Vanessa, who stood smug and glowing, clutching the bouquet like a trophy. Elena's lips parted, but no sound came. The silence in the cathedral pressed against her chest, urging her to either remain still or to change everything with a single breath. She glanced once more at the man in the fourth row, the secret lover, his eyes met Vanessa's again, and she saw it. The truth. The betrayal. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. Elena stepped forward from the shadows, her shoes echoing against the marble floor. A ripple of confusion passed through the guests as their heads turned toward the uniformed housekeeper. Murmurs broke out. Vanessa's head snapped toward her, her expression a perfect mask of shock and then venom. Elena's voice shook, but it carried through the cavernous hall. "I can't stay silent." Her words shattered the hush like glass. Every eye fixed on her, every whisper died in the air. She took another shaky step forward, her hands trembling as she raised her chin. Richard's brows furrowed. "Elena." His voice was gentle, confused. He had never heard her sound so resolute. Vanessa hissed through clenched teeth, her smile frozen in place. "What are you doing? Get back to your duties." But Elena didn't move back. The truth, long buried, now clawed its way out. Her fear had not vanished. It still gripped her like a vice, but the weight of silence was heavier than the risk of speaking. And as the stunned crowd waited, Elena realized there was no turning back. Elena's knees trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. The silence in the cathedral was suffocating, so heavy it seemed to press down on her chest. She could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears, loud as the tolling bells outside. For a moment she almost wished the marble floor would split open and swallow her whole. But then she saw Richard's eyes, kind, confused, searching, and she knew she had no choice but to continue. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice shaking, "but I can't let this happen. I can't watch you, Mr. Richard, marry someone who doesn't love you. Someone who has been lying to you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guests leaned forward, clutching pearls, whispering in shock. The priest froze, his hand still poised over the open book. Richard's brows knit tighter, his expression wavering between disbelief and concern. Vanessa's face twisted in fury, though she quickly smoothed it back into a brittle smile. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice dripping venom beneath its sweet exterior. "She's the housekeeper, for heaven's sake. She's jealous and trying to ruin our wedding because she can't stand to see someone like me happy." Elena shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "No, I don't want anything from you. I can't stay silent anymore. I've seen too much." Her voice steadied as she spoke, drawing from a strength she didn't know she had. "I've seen you sneaking out late at night when Mr. Richard was away on business. I've seen you come home with lipstick smeared, smelling of another man's cologne. I've seen you, in cars, in restaurants, holding hands with someone else. You think the staff doesn't notice, but we do. And she faltered, catching her breath, "I can't let him make vows to a woman who never meant hers." The crowd erupted into whispers again, louder this time, like a storm sweeping through the pews. Heads turned toward the sharply dressed man in the fourth row, whose face had gone pale. Vanessa's mask cracked, she darted her eyes toward him in panic, and that small, fleeting glance was enough. Richard followed her gaze. His chest rose and fell, his jaw tightening as his mind pieced together fragments of memory, her evasive answers, her sudden mood changes, the unexplained trips. He looked back at Elena, his expression darkening. "Is this true?" His voice cut through the cathedral like a blade. Vanessa let out a brittle laugh, stepping closer to him, clutching his arm as though sheer affection might blind him again. "Darling, don't you see? She's desperate. She's nothing but a servant. She probably thinks if she drives us apart, she'll have a chance with you herself." How pathetic. Elena flinched at the words, her dignity stung, but she didn't waver. "I don't want your money or your place," she said firmly. "I only want you to know the truth. Because you're a good man, Richard, and you don't deserve this." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on, desperate for him to see. "You don't deserve to be mocked behind your back while she plans to use you and then discard you when it suits her." Vanessa's composure crumbled, her face flushing with rage. "Enough," she shrieked, her voice echoing through the cathedral. "You'll regret this, you stupid girl. Richard, tell her to leave before she ruins everything." But Richard didn't move. His eyes bore into Vanessa's, searching, demanding honesty. "Is it true?" he asked again, his voice low, dangerous. Vanessa faltered. For the first time, she couldn't meet his gaze. Her fingers twitched on his sleeve, and her lips parted, but no denial came. The silence was her answer. The crowd's whispers rose to a roar, scandal spreading like fire. Elena's hands trembled at her sides. She felt sick, lightheaded, as though she might collapse at any moment. But she also felt strangely free, the weight of silence finally lifted from her shoulders. She had spoken the truth, consequences be damned. Richard's shoulders sagged as the realization settled over him. The love in his eyes drained away, replaced by betrayal and sorrow. He stepped back from Vanessa's grasp, his face ashen. "I gave you everything," he whispered, though the microphone carried it for all to hear. "And this is what you were going to give me in return." Vanessa reached for him again, her voice cracking with desperation. "Richard, please, you have to listen. She's twisting everything." But the crowd had already judged. They saw the guilt in Vanessa's eyes, the truth in Elena's trembling words. The perfect image she had worked so hard to build shattered in an instant, crumbling like glass underfoot. Elena stood frozen, her chest rising and falling as she fought to breathe. She had done it, spoken the truth at the altar. What would come next, she didn't know. But for the first time in years, she felt she had chosen dignity over fear. And Richard, staring at the woman he thought he knew, realized his entire future was balanced on the edge of a decision he had to make. The cathedral had never felt so heavy with silence. The guests, once dazzled by the glamour of the occasion, now sat stiff and wide-eyed, their whispers curling through the air like smoke. Richard stood frozen at the altar, his face drained of color, his hands clenched at his sides. Beside him, Vanessa's diamond-studded veil shimmered under the lights, but her beauty now looked brittle, a mask cracked beyond repair. "Elena," Richard said softly, his gaze shifting to the trembling housekeeper who had just risked everything. There was gratitude in his eyes, but also devastation. He turned back to Vanessa, his voice breaking. "Is it true? Tell me now, before God, before everyone, have you been lying to me?" Vanessa's lips quivered. For a split second, she looked like she might confess, her eyes darting again toward the man in the fourth row. But then her pride surged back, cold and venomous. "She's lying," Vanessa said sharply, forcing her voice steady. A pathetic little servant, desperate for attention. You're really going to believe her over me? Richard's jaw tightened. It isn't just her words. He glanced at the man in the pews, who shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny. It's the way you can't even look me in the eye right now. Gasps and murmurs rippled again through the crowd. Elena, standing at the side, felt her stomach twist with nerves. She had spoken the truth, but what if Richard dismissed her, choosing love's illusion over reality? What if all she had done was ruin herself? The priest cleared his throat uncertainly. Perhaps we should. No. Richard's voice cut through, firm and final. He turned fully to Vanessa, his broad shoulders squaring. This wedding is over. The words struck the cathedral like a clap of thunder. Guests gasped, some covering their mouths, others exchanging shocked glances. Vanessa's face went stark white, then deep crimson. She reached for Richard's arm, her voice rising in desperation. You can't do this to me. In front of everyone. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Humiliating, Richard repeated, his voice low with fury. You humiliated me the moment you betrayed me. You humiliated yourself when you thought you could stand here, lie to my face, and still walk away with my name and my fortune. Vanessa's facade crumbled, rage spilling out like poison. So what if I wanted more than this dull, perfect little life you promised me? You think love is enough? I deserve better than to waste my years on a man who's too blind to see the world for what it is. The words echoed through the cathedral, her venom on full display. The audience recoiled, horrified. Richard's face hardened into something unrecognizable, his heartbreak now a wall of steel. Then you'll have nothing, he said flatly. He turned his back on her, walking down the steps of the altar. The sound of his footsteps echoed like judgment itself. Vanessa screamed after him, her voice cracking. You'll regret this, Richard. You'll regret ever listening to her. Her manicured finger pointed toward Elena, her eyes blazing with hatred. This is her doing, she's ruined everything. But Richard didn't stop, he reached Elena instead, pausing before her. The guests shifted in stunned silence as the millionaire looked down at the housekeeper who had risked everything to tell him the truth. Elena's eyes filled with tears, her body trembling, certain she had overstepped her place. I should be furious that I had to hear it this way, Richard said quietly. But I'm grateful, you had the courage to tell me the truth when no one else would. Elena shook her head. I didn't want to hurt you. I couldn't let you marry her without knowing. For the first time since the ceremony began, a faint, weary smile touched Richard's lips. You saved me, he said simply. Behind them, Vanessa's furious wails echoed, but the guests were no longer looking at her. They whispered about Elena, about the servant who had spoken with more honor and courage than the bride herself. Vanessa, realizing the tide had turned, tore off her veil and stormed down the aisle, her heels striking angrily against the marble floor. The man in the fourth row slunk out after her, avoiding everyone's eyes. The priest closed his book softly, his solemn gaze settling on Richard. The ceremony is concluded, he said, his voice heavy. Not in the way we expected, but perhaps in the way it was meant to be. Richard took Elena's hand briefly, his touch gentle, grounding. She tried to pull away, overwhelmed by the stares of the crowd, but he didn't let her. Instead, he guided her out of the spotlight, away from the altar that had nearly bound him to a lie. As they stepped outside into the cool air, the cathedral bells rang again, this time not in celebration but in warning, a reminder of how close Richard had come to ruin. He inhaled deeply, the weight of betrayal still heavy, but also the relief of a narrow escape. Elena walked beside him, unsure of what future awaited her. She had risked her livelihood, her safety, everything she had, to speak out. Yet as Richard glanced at her with gratitude and quiet respect, she sensed that perhaps her life was about to change in ways she never dared dream. For the first time in years, Elena felt the faint stirrings of hope.